If we're going to win, it's got to be through love. If you have to talk about what Christianity means, you know, with the apostles, they said, well, how could you sum up Christianity? And they said, well, 2 words, what? Love others. They didn't say love people who agree with us, love people in the same party, love people the same skin color, love people the same religion. Love others. We're going to have to love our enemy.
And you have 3 girls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are their ages?
Well, I have 8, 12, 35.
That's what I wanted him to say.
Perfect.
8, 12, and 35. So the 35-year-old is doing what?
She's a musician, Elle King.
And she's kind of a big deal. Like,
she's doing great, it's really
But you
tough.
have that. You have that where that's your first. I was a guinea pig too. I was the first child as well. And so now with 2 youngers, how are you different as a parent?
I hope better. I hope I'm more, I'm very much into this whole idea of this beautiful priest. I have a great one here at Father Paso. And then, but there's this beautiful priest, Father Mike in Duluth, Minnesota. And we couldn't make it to get into the church a couple of weeks ago. So we watched online. And we watched Father Mike. And he said this beautiful thing about how people pray for things when they need something, or when they're in a crisis mode, or when they come to God in a place of need. But and then after, hopefully, thanking them that they got through something, but being thankful for the problem. Thank you for this problem, because this is really an opportunity for growth and for learning.
Wow.
So thank you for that. Thank you for this opportunity. And a lot of times, and I think in our culture, in our in American culture and Western civilization, you think of it as like, I don't want to get through it. I don't want to deal with my problem. But to be thankful for the problem, because that's really, I mean, like, there was a beautiful thing that I heard many years ago, and I believe it was Dr. M. Scott Peck. He said, "You're having marital problems." Most people go, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's terrible." No, but people can say, "Congratulations. Now is when the work begins. Now is when you decide you really want to be with this person. It's going to require work, because there's that love and that crazy love, which is necessary. Because you need to have that crazy love and attraction to have a running start at a life together. But then, the running slows down. You got to get a glass of water. You got to sit down. You got to wake up. You got to brush your teeth. And then that person that you decide to wake up with, and the real person, and that's when the work begins. And it's beautiful. It really is. So I'm really trying to, I can't believe, because growth is pretty slow.
Sure.
But then just when you start thinking that, boom, a lot of things happen. There's a new thing, new in your life as well.
Yeah.
And isn't that a challenge? I mean, another wonderful thing that you didn't see coming?
The engagement?
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely did not see that coming. But I also, you hope that you find love again. I was married for 20 years. Together for 27, like age 20 to 47, that's all I know. And so then it's like, oh my gosh, first of all, I don't know how to date. I don't know how to do this. What are these apps? This is gross. And so to start over at this age is hard. You have, when you talk about pushing through the work, and that's what I go into my second marriage at some point soon with that, right? Like, okay, how will I, maybe not differently, but how will, when the tough times come, because they always do, how do you deal with it differently, more wisely? Okay, and this is your third marriage, right? And so you have, it is. You believe in love, obviously, or else you wouldn't have continued to pursue it and have another one now, a beautiful wife. So what is it with you that you have learned maybe from each one that you're applying this time? If you're a homeowner, you need to listen to this. When is the last time you checked on your home title? That's the legal proof that you actually own your house. And if you're like me, the answer is never. The problem is that in today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document They use a fake notary stamp, they pay a small fee to your county, and boom, your home title is transferred out of your name. And then they take out loans using your equity, or they even sell your property, and you won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or a foreclosure notice. It's crazy. That's why you gotta stop what you're doing and find out today if you're already a victim. Use promo code SAGE at HomeTitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report and a 14-day free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection, 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud should happen, they're going to spend up to $1 million to fix it. So go to HomeTitleLock.com now. Use promo code SAGE. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code SAGE.
I've learned what I don't know. I've learned that I don't know. And what I'm saying is, when you think you know, then there's an encumbrance to your letting new information in. Like, for instance, you know what's really curious? I find this one, and I don't know how to really joke about it yet in my my stand-up performances, but the idea is, like, whenever I think our relationship, my wife and our relationship is really solid, you know, guys, really in a great place right now, that's when she thinks, you know, she has to move on with her life. That's like, what? I just thought it was the greatest time ever. What? So I think it really is.
I feel like that's more a guy thing. It feels like guys are like, oh no, it's great. And women are like, really, you ass? Like, that's what it feels like sometimes. It
does feel like, well, there is a different brain thing happening there. Like, guys, like, for instance, men always need to get credit for any little thing that they do. You know, as soon as they do, it's like, honey, I took out the garbage just now, I just did, you know. And it's like,
congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. Well, oh, that was amazing. This is happening every week now. How did this even happen? You know, it's like, how did you do it? Did you open up the garage, or did you just walk through it? You know, so it's this magical thing. Whereas women don't feel the necessity to get that credit. And I think guys will compartmentalize. And I do think that we'll get this, and then I can work on this, and I can get, you know, this is my work, and these are my friends, and then this is my wife. And for women, I don't think they emotionally, it's beautiful that they don't have, that everything is a thoroughfare in their compartments. They don't feel like there's a separation. There's no walls up. And which is, that I've learned, is that, you know, is that communication. And also coming from, coming from my dad, who also, you know, had a divorce, but he's with my mom the whole time. Mm-hmm. You know, that wall up.
Divorced, but he was with your mom the whole time.
Yeah, well, he was divorced before, and then he remarried so all I ever knew was the two of them together.
Okay.
But I do know that there was, my mother had a real, she was a very strong woman. She was a war survivor. She never complained. She would tell me stories, but if anybody had a right to complain, it was her, you know, for what she went through. But it's funny because my wife was saying, can I tell you something that's bothering me? And instantly I went back to like a child, like, oh, I know I did something wrong. You get yelled at.
What I do. Yeah.
My wife's an adult. That's the thing. We're two adults. And that was something that's really important, is to have two adults treating each other and being the best, their best,
yes,
so that they can be the best to this person. And they need to be the best for themselves, and then to be the best for that other person. But still in the back of my mind, I still have that little boy thing. Hey,
I do too, though. I don't think it's
Where does that
just a
come
boy
from?
thing. Being a pleaser.
Yeah.
And
that's why we ended up having to do this.
Hot mess. Look at us together. You know what? Change it, I swear to God.
Yeah.
No, but it tortures me in many ways. Which is
where did
why
that come from? What was the specific?
Sometimes I think
it's
innate. I do think it's part of it is in our DNA, honestly. Where just recently I let go of trying to be a pleaser, obviously publicly, and I'm like, I don't care what you think or you think or you think.
God challenged you.
It is all God. It absolutely is. But I think that when you tie it back to, you know, relationships, I mean, yeah, I'm immediately like, what did I do? Is he mad at me? Is she mad at me? Whoever.
I know.
And that's not healthy. So
it isn't, but it's a beautiful thing.
There's an innocence to it.
There is, but it does come back from trauma. Now, I didn't believe that there was such a thing as generational trauma. If I can just talk about that for a minute. I mean, the thing about generational trauma, the idea that I understood it, I did, you know, do some therapy with the great doctor, the Hungarian, Canadian, British Columbian Dr. Gabor Mate. And I didn't really buy it because he said, you suffer from, he's very slow. He's very slow talking. It's very, you know, in a meaningful way. you suffer from a generational trauma. And I said, I don't believe what? He said, well, tell me about your mother. And I said, well, my mother, she's Filipino. She raised in the Philippines, and her childhood, she'd never met her father until she was 20 by accident. And she survived. Half her family were killed during the war. And he said, how did that manifest itself for her? And I said, well, she had stomach problems her whole life because she starved. And he said, and you don't think that affected you? And I said, I don't think so because I didn't experience that. So for me, it was like, I said, no, it wouldn't happen to me. So I don't think if it didn't happen to you, it shouldn't affect you. He said, well, let me ask you a question. This is when I got emotional. He said, now, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a comedian. I travel mostly. I've kind of been excommunicated from Hollywood recently, so but I went back to my roots. And the best thing that had ever happened to me was that I would go back to doing something that I loved that I never got to really perfect, or should say, never got to master in the sense that I wanted to. Like I look at the great masters and friends of mine like Chris Rock and Adam Sandler, David Spade and Dave Chappelle, real masters, Bill Burr, and you see, my goodness, they've really mastered something. So getting kicked out of Hollywood brought me back to that. But anyway, he said, so tell me about when you go to your work, what do you do? And I said, well, I fly. You fly? I said, yeah. So you go, anything you bring with you when you fly? And I went, food. And you don't think your mother starving during the war had anything to do with that? And I'm like, wow. Oh my. I never put that together. So there's so much that we carry with us that we don't necessarily put together. But he explained to me also how there's a large amount of asthma with African American women in Baltimore because it's generationally passed on. Fear. And what does fear do? You lose your breath. So it really does.
Oh my gosh.
How we pass these things on and how we interpret these things. It's important because what it did for me was I had to intellectually make that decision to not pass this on to my kids.
Which part?
Fear, or the idea of needing something, food as a way to, as a way to satiate, satisfy yourself emotionally, because it is that, so, and I didn't want, I want my kids to, because we plant stuff in there. They've got our stuff.
Shoot.
And it's our best stuff and it's our worst stuff. I think that's true what they say. Our kids get our best and they get our worst. And they're the worst and best of us. But it is so beautiful because, at least at this point as an older man, I'm able to I could sit in that moment and just have that moment with her. Like with my kids, and I said, I want a hug, but I want a 6-second hug.
Yes. Yes.
And she said, what's that for? And I said, because that's gonna get our cortisols going. That's gonna say, what is that? I said, it doesn't matter. Just give me a 6-second hug. Just hang in there. And I go, you can always have that hug. Years after I'm gone, you can close your eyes and you can go, that's my dad hugging me.
Yes. Do you know that my youngest is a girl and she doesn't like that? She doesn't like to be touched. She's like, I'm good. And then my oldest daughter is me, where it's like, come in. I've actually gotten up to 15 seconds. We do it 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. I started up to 5 seconds, and that was a win. Beautiful? And then to 10 and to 15. I think we're back down to maybe 7 or 8 right now. She's finishing up her freshman year of college. But you are making me look extra deep suddenly right here in this chair. This wasn't supposed to be
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional about that.
No, but because of the generational stuff. And I'm picturing little Rob not even knowing what he's receiving from mom. And do you look back at taking your school lunches and hoarding some of the food? What makes you think now that
I remember my brother, John, he would come out with an ice cream, and I go, oh, that looks good. So I go look for the ice cream. He's like, it's an empty box. I go, he got the last one. Then 10 minutes later, I see him eating another ice cream. I go, he's hiding the ice creams. I went in there and he was hiding them underneath there. So yeah, I think that there was some hoarding going on there, you know? And I remember my mother telling me the story. She said, because when the Japanese first invaded, she was 11, I think, and they hid the girls. There was Hamada was the half. There were, you know, there's great mixes in the Philippines, and so there's the Portuguese Filipino, there's the Chinese Filipino, and then there's the Japanese Filipino. And one of the Japanese Filipinos was Oscar Hamada, who married Jean, the eldest sister of my mother. My mother was the baby. That's all she was babes her whole life. She hated to be called grandma. She said, don't call me grandma. Tita. So, which means aunt. And so what they did was he started burying food, because they said this is going to be important. This is going to be a long one. And then he also hid food up in the attic at their house.
Really?
And they hid the girls, the Japanese, when the Japanese were coming, they hid the girls up in the attic. So she was one of the ones hidden. And up there, she found like a sack that had like, some peanut butter, and that had like some crackers. And then, so he didn't explain, this is food we're going to save for the next couple of however long. So they just started eating it. And then later that day, when he came up, then it said, you can come down now, it's safe. And then he went back up and he said, I think we have mice up in the attic. She said, why? Because they're eating all the crackers. And she's like, oops. But she had to go trade food. She would go trade things for food. Now, the thing about the American culture, which is so beautiful and incredible and rare, is we don't have a caste system here. Like, for instance, for a guy like me, I could, have dropped out of college and never, but suddenly, just from the success I've had, whether it's in stand-up or show business or television, I've been able to meet 3 presidents. I've been able to come in and out of the structure, the societal structure. But in places like the Philippines, whether it's India, a lot of the world, South America, there's a caste system. And in England, there's an expression, the man does not know his place. You're here, you're supposed to stay there. And so for my mother, she explained to me that they were poor, but there was an ever cascading level of poor people. Mm-hmm. They were poor, but they had rice fields, so they were always going to be, they had some money. But she said, but everybody has maids there. She said, even the maids have maids. So it's just, there's another level of poverty. But when they had nothing, when they had, the tables had turned, because the farmers that were called peasants, and they were the lowest social strata. And so, but the tables had turned because they had the most valuable thing at that time, food. So my mother would tell me stories of her and her sisters and her mother, Victoria, making pajamas out of their old bed sheets because it was nice and soft. Your favorite bed sheet, right? Yeah. Making beautiful, comfortable, like these beautiful socks. Soft. Thank you for these. And they then they would go and walk for sometimes 2 days in the mountains to meet the farmers who had kamote, sweet potato. And you can live on sweet potatoes. If that's all you get, you can live on that. There's enough nutrient value to not starve with that. And that's what they lived on. And she was telling me stories, not sadly. She was always like, my mother, she didn't waste anything. She took they would cook it until the sweet potato, until there was nothing left. Until they would put more water and water until there was nothing, but it had some flavor to it. And she said, and then she would take the skin of the kamote, the skin of the sweet potato, she'd burn it in water, and that would be our coffee, because it looked like coffee.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, wow. So, that's a little different than seeing America. So when my mom came to the United States, and she only came over here because she had graduated college. This is crazy, but this is a true story. Her and her sister found money that the Japanese had buried in a cave. As soon as the Japanese ran away, everybody started looking for food and started looking for stuff. So she went where the Japanese were, when the Americans were coming, before they would hide in there when the bombings were happening, the Japanese. So when they left, they went looking for something valuable. Yeah. And so my mom had found, with her sister Rose, they found money that the Japanese had buried and they found what they also thought could be valuable. She called them metal pineapples, which turned out to be hand grenades.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So she said, we'll put those down. But then she graduated college. It's College of Santo Tomas, and she said the other kids knew which kids had dirty money that paid for school. So it was different. Dirty money. Wow. So, but she graduated, and it's the only reason she got to go to the United States. And she loved America. Her father was an American soldier who she never met. But she, until she accidentally came to San Francisco, that's one of the weird things. But the only reason she went was because there was she had a classmate who was not well. And so the family paid for Pilar, my mom, to go with her to go to San Francisco to make sure she's okay in the flight.
Yeah.
And then she was an American citizen because automatically her father was an American citizen. So she came and she stayed, and she always wanted to come here. She would be so angry if anybody ever said anything about the United States, not positive.
Oh,
She
wow.
said, well, then get out. This is the greatest country ever. All you have to do is work hard. You will succeed in America for sure. If you don't like it, get out. And I remember growing up around that,
And now we need her to say that from the mountaintops, right? I mean, there
Well,
are people who are saying that right now,
yeah.
still, for sure. When your mom passed away?
Yeah, she passed away 4 years ago.
4 years ago, so pretty recent.
Almost 93. I think she lied about a year of her age. She had some
okay.
beautiful
We
vanity
do
to her.
that.
She
We
also,
do that.
I could see pictures of her when she kind of did this to her face. She would have loved to have gotten a facelift.
Is that where you get your great skin, though, from your mom?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not facials that you live in Arizona now, in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah, you got to be good. But you know what though? Then you're learning all this new stuff.
True. Your mother would love it.
Your diet also affects if you can get skin cancer from bad diet. I think that there's
Diet,
something true.
sleep,
And
all
also
of it.
sunscreen and sunglasses have to be used sparingly. I think there's something to that.
There's a lot to it. We need
But
doctors.
most of it's
we
the
need
food.
okay.
Most of it's the food.
Yes, and then sleep and lack of, which that's my biggest
yeah.
thing. I need to ask
But you
got
got to work on that, and I can give you some help with that.
No, I need a lot of assistance.
Let me
with
tell you,
this
I'll help you with
disaster.
that. It's getting back to sleep. And I would say for people that you're getting over 40, you're almost there,
well
almost
over.
at 40. Well,
Yeah,
you
I
look
wish.
amazing.
Thank you.
So it's just, there's some things you could do. A couple of multivitamins could work. And then also, I'm a big believer in magnesium. Magnesium, we all need magnesium. Magnesium, because the heart will pump it out, but what pushes it, presses the capillaries in the in the veins that come back to the heart, magnesium. And we're pretty much, unless you eat a couple of handfuls of pumpkin seeds a day, which is good.
Which I wouldn't mind, and salads.
Magnesium.
But wait, I need to ask you one more thing about your mom,
Yeah.
because she sounds so special and amazing, and to have that perspective, despite what she went through.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's obviously a different generation where now kids, it's like, oh my gosh, woe is me. And that's not what your mother was. What do you miss the most about her being here?
Gosh. I was just thinking about, she used to listen to this tape of me singing in a musical I did in this small community musical in San Jose many, many, many years ago. She used to listen to it. She really was a fan of my, she was like my biggest supporter. So what do I miss? I mean, I miss that. I miss her toughness. I do miss that. And the different way of loving me that I have to interpret it now, because there's also, in any family, there's complications. And the way that she loved me, she would say, I love you once in a while, she would, but the way that she would love me, Robert, when I would come to the house, Robert, I did your bed. I made some chicken adobo for you, Robert. That was her way of loving me. Saying I love you was that way.
Acts of service.
But she had a complicated, childhood. I couldn't even understand her. I just don't think that people of this, and not to say that we're soft in this culture, but we're soft in this culture. We are. We're not. The idea of survival, our biggest problem is we have the access to food 24 hours, and it's crap. And all our agencies and our health agencies and our regulatory, have been manipulated, and our government's been manipulated. Thank God for Elon Musk exposing how wasteful our government is. And but we as a society, we have to we got to get beyond that, and we have to, because we never suffered that kind of war.
Right.
I think we, there's a chance we're going to really, really suffer if we don't get a handle on this, and that's why I believe God put certain people. God chooses people that we necessarily wouldn't choose.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But,
I mean, look at the leadership right now.
Yeah.
With an Elon Musk and a Donald Trump.
Can you imagine?
Never.
Can you imagine
even a year ago.
Can you imagine Donald Trump being the rational, logical choice for Americans? I mean, and it is, and he is. And I remember because speaking with, I had lunch with 3 priests. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but it is quite. You got one there, you got one there, you got one there.
Oh, no.
What are they going to tell me?
Yes.
But they were telling me how they were praying for Donald Trump and that he was chosen by God, and I totally believe that.
I do too.
I mean, I do. I mean, I really do. I think, if you look back, and I started looking up like some of the other choices that God has made. If you look at, Moses, a stuttering shepherd, I wouldn't think like, you need to release people from Egypt. I mean, you wouldn't think like, you wouldn't go there first. Ramses, you need to. There's going to be another plague.
Rob,
and they go, I don't take,
Robert.
get out of here. I know that's very sacrilegious, but in my mind, you have to play it out. Comedically, you have to. And so, then you have David, King David, an adulterer, a man who coveted another man's wife, and a murderer. And I think God looks at it and goes like, well, yeah, but that man has the fire I need to accomplish what I need to accomplish.
What I need, yes.
I need.
Who's the messenger?
Yeah, and then no one could have taken the psychic toll that Donald Trump
There's
took.
no
Nobody.
There's no way.
I mean, these crazy lunatics in New York, 34 bogus counts of something they would have not done to anybody else.
Nobody.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And it's just and the constant attacks that happen to him. Constant.
Yes.
I mean, to where they want to take away hundreds of millions of dollars from him, and for him and his family, constantly attacked. And for him saying, no, there's still work to be done. And if anything, it's the Democrats and truthfully, their abject hatred of, and not thinking things through. If they would have just let him have his 2 terms, and then they'd be done with him at this point, but they didn't.
But thank goodness.
Thank goodness, because this is when we need him most.
Happen. We needed to crash and burn over the last 4 years.
Absolutely.
In order for people to realize Donald Trump is not that bad.
Well, also, we have to, what are the values that we have here in America? I mean, are we going to have an America for Americans? And look, the thing about America is it really is. We do welcome others, but it has to be, we're either a nation of laws or a nation of no laws. And one of the laws is you have to come in legally. And God bless you if you come here and you work. We need workers. We need people to come and work, obviously. But it has to be done right. We just can't, to
me, this is not a difficult concept.
It's not a debate
to comprehend. It's ridiculous. Illegal. That word means something. My grandparents came over from Italy and Ireland and different island nations.
Yeah.
Legally.
The mix is the most beautiful thing of all. We have the mix.
That's the mix. But that's what makes America great.
Yes.
Who was it that I was speaking with recently? I forgot who it was. And talking about watching the opening ceremonies.
I hope you don't refer to me next time I thought. Who was I talking
that guy.
to? I can't remember. He was short. And
that guy.
Had some kind of Asian, some kind of foreign look about him.
And his clothes matched perfectly. Yes, that guy. No, it was about watching the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And you can basically see, you don't have to see the whole contingent from China with the flag in front. You know that they're Chinese, and it's a beautiful culture, and you can tell by the look.
Great history.
You can look, and basically every country has a look of the people that represent it, and it's beautiful. And in America, there's not one look.
Wasn't that beautiful?
People come in from everywhere to be an American, and it's black and white and Indian and Asian and gay and straight and all of it. And when I think about the opening ceremonies, it is the coolest thing to me about the American flag is how diverse we all are physically when you see that.
But the diversity, which is the strength of our country, it doesn't have to be enforced. It happened.
It just happened on its own with people doing
wasn't
it the right
pushed
way,
on-
though.
Yes, yes.
People doing it legally. When I
Right,
I'm
and
in
I
an
should
Uber-
say people did fight and die for it, and I mean,
Oh, for sure.
for equal rights. But I'm saying though, the diversity that we see now wasn't thrust upon us in that it did have the progression did happen. People did have to fight for it, and I don't mean to take away from it all, but the civil rights, which was
Of course.
but when you see it now, I think that. We have to be careful because that diversity, equity, and inclusion is now becoming another way to reinforce racism again and to judge people by the color of their
divisive.
skin.
It's divisive, and it actually some of the decisions made with DEI are racist. I was going to mention Uber. And when I always talk to, I talk too much, of course, but to Uber drivers, I love people's stories. That's why I wanted to start the show. And so I'll talk to an Uber driver.
Yeah.
And one of them I'll never forget was here from somewhere in Africa. Yeah. And it had been 5 years. And he said he had like 2 more years left. He'd been sending money home every month to his family. And I just said, well, how do you feel about those who are here illegally? This is probably a year ago before.
Yeah.
And we were at a stoplight. He turned and he looked at me and he was so angry. He almost had tears in his eyes because he is working his tail off to send money home so that they can come here, support themselves, but come and do this the right way, legally in America.
Isn't that beautiful?
And so to me, and I thanked him. I'm like, thank you for wanting to be here and for working and contributing and doing it the right way.
Right.
And that's the problem. So when people stereotype conservatives, Republicans, whatever it might be, to say you're anti this and you're racist and you're no, we just can't afford to take care of our own. Have you seen San Francisco? Much less those who are not coming in the right way. So I'm done with the argument. I'm done with being shamed with that. It is so basic.
Well, it's become now, I mean, I think even the Democrats are coming off of that. What the
hell took so long?
Well, because what as you know, has become very obvious, it just was a complete, utter scam to make sure that there was no more swing states.
Yes.
That there was no more divide.
Infiltrate those states.
That's why, I mean, why are they flying in 30,000 Haitians into Ohio in the middle of the night?
Yep.
You only do something in the middle of the night, chartered, paid by American taxpayer dollars.
We paid for that.
You're only doing it if you know you're doing something wrong. And they were, but they were only doing it to shift the balance of power. So we'd have a democracy. You can choose whoever Democrat you want. It's a free country. Choose whatever. You got these two, choose. That's what happened. And that's what's happening around the world. And that's why it was so important for this. And they say it's not a Republican revolution. What it is the Democrats were trying to do a socialist revolution, and the Republicans have put a stop to it. That's all this is. And if you take a look at what happened, there's not even a democracy or a democratic process going on in the Democratic Party. What they do is they drop out. So you had Klobuchar, you had Harris drop out, and you had Buttigieg drop out, and then you had Buttigieg drop out, and then they all support. So basically, they took away the choice for the voters after the first 2 primaries in 2020, and they said, and so of course he's going to win North Carolina. He's not running against anybody else.
Right.
And so they took away that choice, and they did the same thing last time. They did the same thing in 2024. They took away all the choice. So is you going to vote for Kamala Harris? No, we're going to decide who you pick. So she was,
remember
as they
in
anointed.
Michigan when they wouldn't even let RFK on the ballot?
Yeah. So there's your democratic process happening.
Yeah. Well, but right now I do think, to me, and I never thought I would feel this strongly about any of it.
Yeah.
And now to me, fine, go ahead. Keep putting AOC out there. Keep putting Bernie Sanders out there. Keep letting Joe Biden go on TV and talk an hour. He needs to just enjoy the rest of his life and take pride in whatever, but don't have a microphone in front of this man's face. That's actually, it is the elder abuse, which I've been speaking about for 3-4 years.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I interviewed him right after he took office in 2021.
Yeah.
And I noticed it then, and this was not in person. It was COVID time. It was like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are we? Fine, go ahead and keep putting them
Sharp
out there.
as a tack.
Gavin Newsom, yes. But keep putting them out there because they are continuing to drive home the point as to why they cannot be in charge at the end of the day.
I agree. And I just hearken back to, remember when we were kids and there were people smoking marijuana? And we remember I hope those people never get in charge one day, because if they do, they're going to screw up everything. And take a look at the states. I mean, take a look wherever legal marijuana is. Nothing good has come from it, except eventually the small players get squeezed out, and there's enough money into it, it'll get to Wall Street, and that's exactly what's happened. So
all of these opinions of yours
Yes.
are why you're excommunicated from.
Excommunication, isn't that such a funny word, though?
Yeah.
Because it works in the atheist world. Because now science and religion had to separate, because because when Galileo, Copernicus said, well, we got proof that the sun isn't real. It's not the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, but it's the earth, and we can show you there's a pinpoint, and you can see how it comes. And but that was against the Catholic dogma at the time, and so they had to recant, even though they knew that was a fact. So Galileo, which got to go to a beautiful prison, I'm sure, in Germany, but the way to survive was to separate. So science had to move away from theology. So you had a separation between theology and science, and so but it was still the same. It's still structured theologically. In other words, so you had the laws of the science had laws of nature. They just took out the lawgiver, but the law was still there. So it still has a theological bend to it. So even today, when they call it canceled,
yeah,
in the atheistic culture, which is the largest religion now, is still a religion. So when you get excommunicated, you are taking out. And what does excommunication mean in our church? It means that you are removed from the services, and you are not allowed to take communion. So
yes.
you're not now, you're out.
So when you describe the fact that you're not in Hollywood in that traditional way, you're out? Were you canceled?
If you don't go along with the dogma,
Correct.
The dogma is that you can open borders, let everybody, and then you have to agree with what Hollywood is doing, which is it's very closed-minded. It kind of flip-flops. You think, because I remember in 1980, and I remember, I'm sure you remember this too, like the moral majority, and these, it's like, we don't want any thought police.
Right.
So, but the thought police is coming from the left. So when I realized, and it was really under President Obama, where you realize, wait a minute, it's when they did the idea that, and I forget the legislation, but it was something, I forget the name of the legislation, but the idea of it was a return to Wilsonian propaganda on Americans again. Like, for instance, the CIA can do propaganda overseas for whatever national security interests, American interests. Mm-hmm. But the idea of propagandizing Americans in America, that was a real shocker. So I think you have that tyranny was coming from the left since then.
It's been coming for a while. Yeah.
And when I was in California, you saw it affecting parental rights. Mm-hmm. In other words, so the parents weren't allowed to make the decisions for what they thought was best for the kids. And I just don't remember ever signing anything saying, I am co-parenting with the state of California on how I raise my child.
Yes, exactly. The Department of Education or whoever runs it in California, we never did that. And so now all of a sudden, for us to not have any say or to even be informed that a counselor is talking to my child, are you sure you're a boy? Are you sure? Because you might be a girl. And that's what they're doing without our permission. But I do think that's one reason why.
That's demonic.
It's evil.
Well, I would say this too. Remember in the old days when, remember your parents and the police would tell you, look, listen, if any adult says to you, keep a secret between you and that adult, call the police. That's a molester.
Yes.
So now in Colorado, that's called a public school teacher.
Exactly.
It's like, what happened? I thought you were the police warned me. They tell you, nope, you got to keep this between you and us. It's like, so that is, that's demonic. I don't know how else to say it.
No, I agree with you. It's evil what is happening and what they've allowed to happen. What was your turning point?
Well, seeing that, and also, what's happening is that we have a really high incidence of autism in this country. And for people to say, well, autism, no, they're special kids. No, there are 25% of these autistic children are severely autistic. I mean, I saw kids at 19 years old that were 3-year-olds still wearing diapers. And then there's the violence that comes with that and the head banging. And they don't show that on TV. They don't show that as this is part of the autistic. And truthfully, a high percentage of these people who are susceptible to what this is a social contagion, this trans issue, there's a high percentage of them that are on the spectrum. So they're vulnerable to this idea.
So is that what it was for you?
Well, for me, I met with these parents. Well, we were about to have a kid, my wife and I, and also, I've always been questioning about medicine. And then my father died in his 60s, 68. And I remember we got him all the best Western medicine we could. He died right in front of me. And I went like, well, this is not working. I mean, this is all well-intentioned, and they're beautiful doctors and everything, but I said, there's got to be another way. And so I started looking elsewhere, and there was another way. You can get you can stop the body's, stop what you're putting into the body. You can use food as medicine, but you can also stop the toxicity and stop it. And he was on 12 different prescription drugs when he passed away. That was causing incredible havoc, in his body chemistry. And so I said, there's got to be something else. And so, I like to ask questions. And I asked the question because I was about to do a movie with a director, and his wife was one of these TV doctors who goes on TV, and she just had a beautiful baby. And I go, well, what shots did you give your baby? And she said, none. And I said, but you recommend for everybody? She said, well, that's up to them.
So you're recommending it. And as doctors, that's one of the groups of people that I don't question. I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. You just do
They're
recommend.
Smarter than me. That's their expertise. She says we need to give the kid 4 shots. I did it.
Yeah, you do it, but you don't realize that the doctors who really know don't. I mean, this
No,
one.
but that's demonic.
That is
That's
what that is like it's not okay for you. It's okay for you, but it's not okay for us because that's really where it came from. So I realized then we went from 1 in 10,000. I mean, the whole idea of autism was first discovered. There's a beautiful book called Dissolving Illusions by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys and Roman Bystrianic. If you want to learn about the history of vaccines, and when I talk about it in my book, it's just another medical intervention. And that's a bad idea. And I'm sorry, I'll just say it. It's a bad idea. And the idea that, and you can go on the website at the CDC and you can say, well, what stopped these plagues, or when did the health turn? And it wasn't because of vaccination. Sorry, they will tell you it's because of the introduction of sanitation, clean drinking water, better nutrition, and just vaccination piggybacked on top of those gigantic, successes in human health. And so what happened was, though, and this is coming back from, if you take a look at the first polio, the first times we saw polio was in the 1890s, 1892, 1893, in Massachusetts, the first time it showed up. This is Jeffrey Jackson, just did a wonderful report on the high wire. And I recommend that if you want to know the history of this, vaccines and the introduction to it, specifically about polio. The first time that we saw that is Massachusetts in 1892, 1893. What was happening in Massachusetts at that time? Well, there was this gypsy moth, this giant moth that was appearing, that was brought in from Europe, that somebody, they usually, that's how screws everything up. You bring it over to kill this, and then it does something else unexpected.
Exactly.
So they got to kill these moths. So what did they start doing? They started coming up with something to kill these moths. What did they use? They used arsenic and lead. And they mixed this tar substance together, and then they started killing the moths. What it was, they started putting it everywhere. What was it also doing? Well, it was causing paralysis in the moths, so that the moths were spasming and losing the use of their limbs. The same thing. So what was it doing to the children? It started happening again. So that's the first time. It also at the same time in that same area where they were using arsenic and lead at the same time we had the first polio. And polio it's in your system. It is, and it's just whether it is a benign and what causes the idea that could cause was causing the extremities for children, their limbs to be paralyzed. All of a sudden, you can't say it's a coincidence.
Right.
And the same thing happened years later with DDT.
Oh,
which
wow.
DDT was also, that came in at that same time. There, I remember, in the 1950s, you could see, go online, go to YouTube, you can see them spraying DDT in pools. There's no problem. We have the answer to this. And at the same time, that's when the polio came out. So
that was your.
well,
because
I started going down that road. But once you go down that road,
start digging, you can't unsee.
you can't.
This stuff,
When I would
right?
see, so what happened was, eventually, there were so many problems happening from lawsuits to the vaccine industry in the early 80s that they went to the Reagan administration. They said, hey, we're going to stop making vaccines unless you give us liability protection from lawsuits. And because they were getting the shit suit out of them. And so what happened was the Reagan administration, and I think Reagan, it was a toss-up whether he didn't want to sign this.
Okay.
But they ended up doing the Childhood Vaccine Safety Act of 1986, which Congress ruled back then that vaccines are, and look this up, vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. So in other words, they're going to have safety problems. And if it's going to be safe, and if you're going to mandate it to go to school, then you have to give us all the information.
Yes.
I need to know all the risks for my child. One of the great things, Dr. Jay Gordon, who's a fantastic pediatrician in Los Angeles, he said a wonderful thing. He was our pediatrician in Malibu. He said, when a baby is born, the parents don't come to me and say, okay, what's the best thing to do for Los Angeles?
Yes.
No, what's the best thing to do for my baby?
For this baby.
For our baby,
human.
for this precious new incarnation of the universe, this new gift from God. What do we do with this? And so we cannot make those decisions based on what's best for Big Pharma. So what happened is when they got the protections from Congress to no longer get sued, instead of saying, thank you, instead of saying, well, because it was mandated they need to check the drugs and make them safer and to make sure that they're safe to go back. They never did. They never went back and showed safety studies. They never went back, here's the new set. And so what they did is they just ramped up the schedule. So from 3 shots when I was a kid, now we have 52 different doses. I think it's 14 or 16, if you count COVID, of 16 different vaccines before the age of 6.
Yes.
And there's never been a safety study of the entire vaccine schedule. And I would say anyone who's for pushing this vaccine schedule, whether it's the old CDC rep, Walensky, or whether it's Fauci or whomever, I'd like to see you show up and get the whole, if you think it's so safe, get the whole recommended childhood schedule and do it right there on stage. Do all the 52 doses right now and see how safe it is.
But guess
and they'll never do it.
But no, because they never had to. So they got to this point that they were able to push that many because we never pushed. We never questioned. Mothers like me just trusted because we didn't know
why
any
wouldn't you
different.
trust your doctor? He's got to know.
That's the point. So they did a brilliant job of gradually getting to this point where we just kept saying yes and yes and yes, and we didn't question anything.
Until God gave us this wake-up call, which was not only for our personal individual COVID, it really was. Because what happened in our Constitution, which I would beg our child, it's amazing that they were allowed to take civics out of schools.
Oh, yeah.
When I graduated high school, that was at the last year, I think in 1981, 82, they took civics out. It's like they don't want you to learn how our government operates and works. And you should learn how to do it.
But that's another example.
Yeah.
Is when they continue to just slowly but surely, brilliantly, if that's your goal, just
demonically.
Yes, but to take things out.
So in our Constitution, because there were plagues at the time of Washington. I think there was during the Revolution, Washington, there was smallpox going around. They didn't stop the war. So you know what? Let's stop killing the Brits. No, let's all take a break because there's a really bad flu going around. And so there was, significantly, there's nothing in the Constitution about, well, you have your right to assemble and to petition your government for grievances, except if there's like a really bad flu. So they was specifically plague-proof, our Constitution. But our Constitution is just a piece of paper. It can always be usurped by some courts that are grievous, or by the people not standing up for it, or our government usurping their rights, which what the Democrats did.
Yes.
So what you had, but there's always the chance for a bad case that goes against the constitutional rights. If you want to look at the Dred Scott decision in 1857, where the Supreme Court, 9 white men ruled that this black human being was equivalent to a horse. I mean, that should be for all time the worst decision ever made by a group of men.
And it must continue to always be discussed.
Must, and as well as like the Japanese internment.
Absolutely.
In 1942, the idea that you could take American citizens, U.S.-born American citizens that just happen to be Japanese, and take away their rights, and go, what? And then intern them.
Yeah.
And take away their land, and like take away their citizenship and their rights. So that's a turning point. You know, school prayer, the idea, no, you can't pray in school. These are turning points where they go against, and it's from courts deciding and interpreting it and actually undermining the Constitution. So that's something we need to be aware of, and we need to fight back. Yeah.
So vaccine, what's going on in schools, and you're living in Malibu?
I was living in Malibu, and I said, we're getting out because this is no longer safe.
This?
Well, when the pandemic happened,
Right.
and I'd already experienced rights being taken away from parents, where you couldn't go to school.
When did you really start to get vocal about it, though, publicly?
Well, a group of parents who had one of them had a 19-year-old who was still in diapers, and I saw the kid, beautiful kid, but he was literally was a 3-year-old because he had brain damage. We need to call what these are.
Yes. What
happens is, and there's been a fight for years. Like, no, it hasn't. There's no coincidence. There's no coincidence. I'm sorry, there is. You can look at the graph. You can see the number of vaccines going up directly proportional to the number of autism spike going up. You can't say, but it's no correlation. No, there is. And we have to just stop, and we have to say, until we can prove it's not, let's stop it. So I met these parents, and I said, and they showed, I met with their kids and they talked to me, and it just made sense. And I said, well, if there's a gigantic spike in autism, which basically what happens is these kids, some people are more genetically predisposed to having a cataclysmic event. And what it is, it can go from their gut biome and their mitochondria that gets a signal to their brain, cause brain inflammation. And that is what because your brain will swell up, and there's it's an enclosed in your skull. So obviously you have
this
encephalitis,
yes.
And then that causes brain damage. And so luckily for some people have it worse than others, but there are some people who have devastatingly have it, will go into seizures. They'll have brain inflammation, this encephalitis, and it'll cause devastating lifelong problems. And so when I realized this, I said, well, it's clearly, I'll just go to the state capitol in Sacramento and explain what's really happening here. Maybe my voice, being someone who's famous, well, maybe that will resonate. And if anything, it was just they just opened the floodgates to attack me.
Sure. Yeah.
But that was a sign that that's how powerful pharma is. 85% of all advertising everywhere, television, just go, when they say ABC News brought to you by Pfizer, it's because this is news paid for by the pharmaceutical industry,
right.
That's approved by the pharmaceutical industry.
But do you know how long it took me to realize that simple fact when it says by? Like, you look back and in hindsight, I have felt dumb because I'm like, how did I not connect these dots earlier,
Well, I talk about it in my book, which is
Show
right
me.
Here. So this is the You Can Do It book, and we talk about what happened because the idea of broadcasting is the airwaves are owned by the people.
Yep.
So back then there was only 3 networks: ABC, CBS, and NBC.
I'm stealing your reading glasses.
And then my eyes are messed up. So what happened was
hell no.
Sorry. But the idea to get a license to broadcast, you had to go to the government.
Yeah.
And to the
FCC.
and to go to the FCC and say, I want to broadcast. They said, okay, to do that for ABC, they said, okay, you can broadcast. However, 25% of your broadcast needs to be news, needs to be in the best interest of.
Yes.
And that was what they had to do to get the right to broadcast. You had to say news so that the people. And it wasn't just date the disease of the week, Dateline or that stuff. or Entertainment Tonight. This was news that needed to be hard news.
Yeah.
And so by 1968, 25% of the news, of your broadcast had to be news to inform the public, for the public, because that's the right, you got the right to broadcast, you need to do something for the public. And that's why when you see a news van parked in a white zone, they don't get a ticket.
Right. Because they were predisposed. They were told, you can do this, you will do this.
You are in the interest, you're doing something for the public good, so you're not going to get a ticket.
And you will cover the story. Now we know.
Now we know.
This way.
Well, now we know that there is a real problem with how the news, as you know, when Trump said fake news, you're fake news, you're fake news, you're fake. Well, were you from CNN? Fake news. And I remember that was aggressive, but he was also right.
He was right about
100%.
everything. About
He really
all
was.
of it. And you don't have to like him.
You don't have to like him.
To acknowledge that.
That's what I tell Democrats. I said, listen, he's going to be president now. You got to deal with it. And don't worry, he's not going to say, because it's like, when you need a plumber, when your pipes break in the toilet, God forbid, it's all over there's stuff floating around. You need somebody to come in. He's got to clean up the mess. You don't have to invite them for dinner.
No.
You don't have to. And that's the same thing with President Trump. You don't have to invite him for Thanksgiving dinner.
No, it's fine.
If he's
him.
a little too brusque for your sensitive sensibilities. However, you do need him to close the border to stop letting in Venezuelan gang members. You do want that. There's no Democrat who wants Venezuelan gang members in their neighborhood. And it's like Oprah. That really pissed me off about Oprah, who's a really bright person, who's a billionaire, who was able to be in this amazing opportunity, the greatest experiment in freedom in the history of the world. And she was able to use that freedom to become a billionaire. And so for her to say, if you vote for Donald Trump, you're never going to get to vote again. I said, first of all, that's a lie. That's a knowing lie.
It's a lie.
And it's blatantly untrue. And I said, for someone who's benefited so much, for someone who I know, everybody knows Oprah, but for someone who's smarter than that, for her to manipulate, to be in a situation to manipulate other people. But luckily, she wasn't able to manipulate enough people.
People saw through it.
Yeah, even Obama shaming,
Black men in Pittsburgh a couple weeks before the election.
I mean, that was I remember seeing that that's not very nice.
Well, but you know what? I
saw
saw on social media so many Black men saying, you know what? We supported you. We like you. Don't tell us what to do and how to think.
Yeah.
Because of our skin color, we are only allowed to think a certain way. That's actually racist.
It is laughable, and it is racist.
And I have certainly received a lot of that too. But basically, you're saying that as a group of Black people, we're not smart enough to think for ourselves.
And that's what pisses me off. And that's the thing about stepping down. Judd Apatow loves to talk about, hey, don't, you are, what's the term for it? You're punching down. It's like punching down. That means, is there people below other people? Yeah. I don't buy into that. So there's an elitist sensibility to that. The elitist thing is saying this, you are so feeble down there, you need protection. You can't think for yourself, you can't protect yourself. So your liberal elites, we will protect you because you're so feeble. And that's a real problem. So that's what was happening. And when Obama was saying well, you don't, you can't support a sister. Well, what? So, what does a sister stand for? What is this sister? Can we talk about
what she stands for? I don't care if she's green. What does she stand for?
How does it help me? How does it help us?
My neighborhood, my family. How does it help? And
exactly.
It's so basic.
And he didn't do that because she didn't stand for anything.
Well, and I think he's been exposed in some of those ways as well.
I think so too. And it's interesting because
the divisiveness.
He got a good deal at Netflix and they just canceled it.
Oh, I didn't know they canceled.
Yeah, well, no, but he didn't doing any new shows because you got to. Welcome to capitalism.
Got to work.
Get some hits. Get out. And even though they're very liberal over at Netflix, and they've been very nice to, have me on their channel once in a while, not often enough, but it's still a business. What's selling? You got to do that. I mean, I don't. One of the things that was that happened to me during COVID, I got fired off a movie, and. I'm not going to say which company fired me, but I understood it, and I didn't. It's not right, and I felt because of my stance on vaccines.
Because you weren't going to be forced to take it.
I wasn't going to be.
Is that why they fired you?
I was outspoken about it, and I think that ultimately they hired me, and I think they termed unhired me, and I got it
instead of fired.
They were under such pressure to do it. And I never went public with it until now. I did understand it. It did piss me off, but at the same time, it's like they got a business. They're under a lot of pressure. They've got, the government at the time and this and that. And it's like, I get it. I get it.
You get it, but it doesn't mean it's right.
It's not right.
And then the problem is all the companies behave like that. And then the leaders, half of whom don't believe what they're mandating.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's important to stand up.
Effect.
I got kicked out of Hollywood for standing up, and I did. And but it was the best thing that could ever happen.
Why?
Because it freed me. Because I think that, like, there was no way anybody who supported, Robert Kennedy, and he's a great man. This is a man, they talk about, like, the people who had personal issues, and they talk whether it was JFK, whether it was Martin Luther King. Can you say the pressures on those men were enormous? And the way that they reacted in their time, we need to look at the totality of the human being and not pick out specific peccadillos. We need to look at what their gift was and what they gave to society and what they sacrificed. And I'm not interested in what they did in their private lives. And for Robert Kennedy,
there's a real fear with him.
There is a real fear
because he was one of them, and then he's stepping aside. He's thinking for himself, and then he probably there's fear also probably because he knows a lot.
He was excommunicated.
He
from
was
the church of the atheistic church of the Liberal Party. He was kicked out, and he was kicked out because he wouldn't go along with it,
right.
Because it wasn't working anymore. Robert Kennedy, we had a conversation, and before he jumped on Team Trump, and let me tell you, Robert Kennedy wants to do something, and he's got down on his hands and knees and prayed for 20 years. Please let me help this scourge of disease with children.
Yeah.
Let me help him somehow. And it is a scourge. It is the actual plague. We don't see it like the Black Plague, but it is a plague, and it is affecting our children. And if we're a society that means anything, we have to be a society that protects our most vulnerable, the most precious members of our society, our children. If we don't do that, then nothing else matters. And so when it was time to make a decision, I was always pushing behind the scenes slightly, and respectfully, to go towards Donald Trump because I knew that was the answer.
Right.
But Robert Kennedy's a much more brilliant man than I am, and so I would, I did push a little bit for him to go independent because I said the Democrats, it's not the answer.
Right.
They're never going to bring you in. When you're out forever. And he said, but with my family history and I said, yeah, but okay, it's not the same Democratic Party. You know that. And he said, yeah. I know it's not. God bless him. But then when it came time, he was, because how the liberal media tries to do it, they'll destroy you. Absolutely. But they don't do it, in one go. They go after you, and they try to go after you, and they go after and kill you, and try to destroy your reputation, pick stuff, find stuff to destroy you. It literally is Agent Orange. The media. They just destroy all the foliage so you starve. And so they go after you and they look up everything they can after you. But then when that doesn't work,
yes,
because Robert Kennedy speaks to people who know that there's a problem. They know that everybody knows somebody's got autism now. Everybody knows a kid or whatever, and they know this, and they know that now it's in every school.
Yeah.
It's in there. Now you have to have, my mom is a reading specialist, and she said she'd have, they would have kids who had reading problems, but nothing like this. It's off the charts. And so, but how the media gets you eventually is to not cover you at all.
Yes.
It is death. It is destruction by ignorance. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. And so when it became time for him to make a decision, because his goal wasn't to be, his ego to be president of the United States. It was to help the abysmal destruction of health in the United States. And I would say purposeful destruction of health, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
And so what he did was he called the Harris administration, the Harris, the Harris, well, not administration, but he called the Harris team. And then he called the Trump team. And the Harris team wouldn't even return his phone call.
Correct. Yep.
But Donald Trump's team called him back, instantly picked up the phone. In 30 minutes after he called Donald Trump's team, he was on the phone with the man himself, with Donald Trump Jr. himself, the 45th president of the United States. And then 2 hours later, they were together right here in Arizona, in Glendale, on stage together with the fireworks. And that was it. And that was a testament to how Donald Trump, he's not thinking about re-election. He's thinking of what he can do now. The best thing I've heard about coming out of D.C. is that he said Donald Trump doesn't give an shit anymore. He's going to do what he wants. He's not worried about, thankfully, he would like to have good press, but he's not worried about that. What he wants to do is good things for the American public. And putting in, and living up to his word, putting in Robert Kennedy as the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
And you saw how much he was fought tooth and nail by the Democrats.
Again.
Even Senator Fetterman wouldn't vote for him. And I was hoping we get a couple of, but that's all they care about. It is a tribalism. It is, either you're the red team or the blue team. And if you dare question the blue team, you're out, and you're out forever. But the purpose of Robert Kennedy is to really look at the science.
Yes.
Because there has not been 1,000 kids tested with the entire vaccine schedule and 1,000 kids without, and who has the better outcomes.
Yeah.
We need to know, if you're going to mandate this thing and make people take, we need to know the risks. And we need to know the benefits, and we need to be the ones making the decision. If you make the decision for us, then it's tyranny, medical tyranny. And so COVID, we've been able to see now with the COVID shots that they were not safe, that Pfizer knew that they were not safe. They were not safe for pregnant women. They were not safe for children. They knew that there was myocarditis, heart problem, and yet they still pushed it. And the Biden administration pushed it. And they lied knowingly.
And that is why, another reason why they lost on November 5th.
Yeah.
Because we had enough time within those 4 years to go, okay, this isn't adding up.
No.
This doesn't sound right. This just doesn't make sense. Common sense was lost on that topic and many, many others.
Yes.
And so that's why I say thank goodness in many ways it did happen this way, that we did have
No, we needed Trump now. We needed President Trump now. We needed Robert Kennedy Jr. now.
You mentioned
we need
RFK.
Casey Means, Dr. Casey.
Dr. Casey Means.
Casey Means. Just that. I mean, when I got that notification yesterday,
yes,
there's somebody I pulled over. And I swear, it was the happiest I've been since my children were born. Which is, how pathetic is that in my life? But how beautiful. Because it really was, this is a person, Callie Means, and Dr. Casey Means. These are people, Robert Kennedy, who their only goal is to make America healthy. And they're going to do whatever they can in the time that we have.
And you can laugh at the acronym MAHA, but it really, really is true.
I thought it was Make America Horny Again when I first heard it. And I said, yeah.
Is that what you prefer? No, married man. You know what? It's funny when you mention RFK and just trying to communicate with Kamala Harris, the Harris campaign team, whatever.
That's a true story.
It reminds me also of Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil tried 20-some times, over 20 times, to talk to Kamala Harris and to communicate with her and have her come on his show and just to talk about things, because he is right down the middle, impartial, and has never said I'm this or that. 25 different times, not a single response back, email, phone call, nothing. So that when that's the case though, and you're trying, because if you remember, Dr. Phil then was there the week before the election on Sunday at Madison Square Garden and was speaking, and he got crushed for speaking there. But
by who?
Well,
and
of
crushed
course.
by the liberal intelligentsia.
But even on social media.
He got excommunicated, didn't he?
You know what? That's the word of the day.
Yeah.
But even on social media and on X and all these places where, now Dr. Phil too. But, and I know how much it bothered him. I had spoken with him about
because it hurts.
Yes, but
wait a minute, they don't like me?
Hurt.
Who else doesn't like me?
Yes.
This may cost me money. How much money?
Yeah. Oh, never mind. I take it all back. That's what some people do, not us.
And he's
Maybe
a champion.
But at the end of the day, it's so interesting because she decided, and her team decided to not speak with him, which should be so telling. But then when he got in trouble.
What is it telling though?
They're afraid of
what?
The truth getting out. They're afraid of being asked specific questions that they don't have the answers to. They're afraid that we have gotten smart enough now to see through the BS. and I think most of us have, but I think it's so
but they haven't adjusted at all. I'm sorry, you think
I think it's so profound that if you listen to Dr. Phil's message at Madison Square Garden that day, there was nothing yay Trump and nothing anti-Kamala.
No, you're right.
If you listen to it again, it could have played, he told me, he said, I would have said the exact same thing at her rally because it's about America. But because she wouldn't answer the phone,
Yeah.
and her team wouldn't answer the phone, you heard it at Donald
Yeah.
Trump's. Now, who knows how Dr. Phil voted? I actually do not care.
He voted for Trump for sure.
Pretty sure. But I don't care in that, because what he
care
was
either.
saying
Was
was
American values.
pro-America.
See, what you happened, you had the left went so far left, they left America behind. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
But when you have fear, we said, we can't let anybody know this. Well, you're screwed.
What are
from the
you
beginning.
hiding? I was on Piers Morgan's show, and I forgot which liberal idiot that I was talking to and arguing with.
I love it.
Michael, he's got 3 names. He's like 12
Yeah.
years old, whatever. I mean, in his 30s, but anything compared to me is like 12 at this point.
Yeah.
Super smart guy, but at the end of the day, I said to him, why is, and this is 2 weeks before the election, why is the only thing you guys are pushing abortion? Why is that?
Because that's what's worked in the midterms.
That had worked, but they completely ignored all the other topics that Donald Trump was talking about and that most of America was talking about. And so at
Right.
least
Well,
tell me the why behind the border being wide freaking open. Well, they're
won't.
going to avoid that
Right.
because they know that the truth is not good, actually.
No, it doesn't help them.
Tell me why it is okay with you that boys are playing girl sports and taking
Yeah.
males away from girls, and that there's physical
They won't
issues
address
with that.
it.
Tell me why. Because they know the truth, but they depended on the American people for too long
Yeah.
to just be to be like I was. If the doctor says this, I say, okay.
Right.
Jump how high? That was me. And so now, once we're educated, what power there is in education.
Well-
and then just know that if you say it out loud, they're going to come for you.
They will come
and
for
you
you,
have
but
to be prepared.
You have to be prepared, but you can't. The idea of not speaking your mind and not is, I said, it's going to cost you because actors, actors call me, and not a lot, but actors call me, and other, agents call me and said, I don't understand
Wait,
what's happening.
agents or Asians?
Both Asian agents. They come and say, Rob, I don't understand. I'm so racist. Hey, I'm Asian. I can get away with that. I'm enough Asian to get away with that.
got enough
Rob,
in you.
please explain to me why you vote for Donald Trump. Come on. Kamsahamnida. So
Do you know, by the way, my son is spending a month right now, he's a junior in college, in Japan.
Japan, he'll have the greatest time. He won't want to
He
come
might
back.
not come
He
back,
won't come
right?
back. It's the most beautiful, crazy, amazing country. You'll love it. He'll love it. So what happens is they called me and they said, I wish I could speak out like you do. And I said, you can.
You can.
But be careful. Don't just put something crazy, tweet it out. But talk to people. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to I said, this guy, he's son of an Academy Award winning actor. And I said, yes, you can, but be careful. If you put it out on there, while you're making a movie for a streaming service, that might affect your next movie at a streaming service. But talk to the makeup lady. She'll agree with you. Talk up to your driver that's driving you to set while you're, on the way between sets. Talk to people. But you have to be judicious about it because you can say enough to get you kicked out. But what happens was, though, when you have a closed system like that, anytime you have a tyranny, you're going to have an inverse reaction to it, as violent as whatever. If you have a violent, shutdown, or whether it's vocally violent, or whether you are excommunicating people, you're going to have people equally. It's just, it's just going to be, inertia. You're going to have that same violent thing. That's the thing about I learned from Indian, the idea of Indian ideology, and there was. Yes, he was asked by, this one king was asked, can I shut down this rebellion? He said, absolutely. Will it, if I crush it, will I, brutally, will I succeed? And they said, absolutely. But you will create an equal force that will come up against you and you will fall eventually.
Yeah.
And so what happened with the Democratic Party was they became so tyrannical and they became so closed-minded and dogmatic, and they became so forceful and excommunicating enough people that those people said, we're going to vote for anything different than this.
Anything but. How many of your Hollywood friends agree with you, would you say, but just no one has heard from them yet? They have not spoken up yet.
Some are speaking up a little bit. It was very
Little
nice.
bit.
When I saw David Spade and Dana Carvey, dear friends, and such brilliantly talented comedians, when they were making fun of Fauci a couple of years ago, I went like, here we go. I love you guys. I knew I loved you for a reason. But I would say a lot of them come over. But the thing about it is, like, and I have people who disagree with me.
Sure.
Chris Rock and I disagree. But like, how awful would it be to only have friends who agreed with you?
I know.
It wasn't interesting. I mean, I see Chris Rock, God bless him, because he's one of the ones who helped me. Him and Adam Sandler probably more than anybody the last 20 years, because Chris Rock is the one, you know, who talked me into doing stand-up again. And that's been the greatest gift for me, getting kicked out of Hollywood or just being too mouthy for Hollywood. And by being too, I remember because when Hillary lost, I did a famous tweet that said, you know, I haven't seen the Democrats this pissed off since we freed the slaves. And boom, that was it. That was it. But that got a lot of, and it's like the manager at the time, Robbie, you can't be saying that kind of stuff because, you know, Hollywood doesn't want controversy. They don't want that. Anything but, and I didn't realize how angry people would be, how angry it was. And it's because not only Donald Trump was the other side, but he wasn't even the approved other side.
No.
Like Mike Pence is the approved other side.
Correct.
Donald Trump isn't, because he is a threat to the system. He is a threat to it. So what we really have...
Because he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. But we had a replacement. We've been able to see just like in Oz, the great Doctor of Oz, we've been able to pull back the curtains on these elites, on the new experts. The new experts, it's a replacement. It is the new aristocracy, instead of lords and dukes and duchesses, we had the replacement for it in our new pushing to a new feudal system. The replacement is letters after your name, PhD, these experts, these talking mouths on TV, these former CIA agents and officials. These are the experts, and we're supposed to listen to them. But then we realized, that was the thing during the planned global pandemic, which was to shut down everything. But they didn't realize that people were going to stop listening to CNN, stop believing the New York Times, and which Noam Chomsky talked about years ago. He said the difference between the New York Times and Pravda and TASS was that in the former Soviet Union, everybody knew Pravda and TASS. Was just the globe, was the state mouthpieces, but people actually believed the New York Times,
right,
and the Chicago Tribune and the LA Times and CNN, and people woke up to it now. And so what happened was the global elites, when they're trying to shut down the world, the one thing they didn't see happening was the citizens becoming the new media, way more powerful. You can take Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan, a hero, and what a great example for other people to take and become something on his own, because enough people rallied behind what he was saying. And what he was saying was he was listening.
He was listening.
He was allowing other voices to be heard.
And asking questions. And then when you learn the facts about it, that's when you form your opinion.
And that's why Joe Rogan, that's the genius of Joe Rogan. And
by the way, remember when Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan?
Yeah, that was
Towards
it.
the end of the campaign.
For hours.
That was it. But as soon as it dropped, it was being downloaded 1 million times an hour.
Yeah.
And in the first 30 hours, there was over 30 million downloads. But then what did YouTube do?
They got rid of it. They canceled it.
All of a sudden, you typed it in and you couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it
because they didn't want that truth out there. And it was also
I talk about in my book, Robert Epstein, Dr. Robert Epstein talks about that, how Google can actually alter elections by suppressing Google's search engine. Now, here's the thing.
Well, but they admitted. I mean, Google, Zuckerberg admitted.
Zuckerberg admitted it. Google still is woke.
It's massive.
Google is still woke, and Google is still suppressing conservative causes and suppressing. But it just became, Donald Trump Jr. will tell you, too big to rig. They could not do it this time. And I believe that they did it last time. And by suppressing information like on Google, that is affecting the election. Forget about Russia.
No,
Google.
Absolutely.
That can affect it by 8-9 points, as Dr. Robert Epstein testified in Congress. And as I spoke to him on the phone, we talk about it in the book, you can do it. So what happens is you have that conservatives being suppressed, and this is an effect on our election. That's an effect on our our freedoms. So, but what they didn't see, what the elites did not see coming, was a citizen revolt by a technological revolt with podcasts.
Yes.
They didn't see that. They didn't see Theo Von. They didn't see another comedian, Theo Von. They didn't see a comedian, Joe Rogan, as being influential globally. And he was. No. And so that's what saved us.
And that is because when people discovered the lies and the inconsistencies being pushed by the mainstream media, like, well, oh my gosh, I have to go somewhere else. Where do I go?
Yeah.
And then the independents are the ones that have really taken over. And you can look at Megyn Kelly's podcast, and she crushes NBC's ratings by herself.
Oh, yeah.
A global network, right?
I will tweet on X, and I will get more people looking at that tweet than watch CNN in primetime. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy and scary,
It is
and
scary.
It's sad, but I did something here in Scottsdale with Charlie Kirk last night with Turning Point USA. By the way, I don't believe this election would have turned out the way it did
without Charlie
Kirk.
And Scott Pressler in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. But
well, these are people that love their country. That's what the Democrats don't realize.
There's too many people who love their country. That
Donald Trump, they can't figure out, what is it about him? Yeah, he's brusque. Yeah, he is we've become in an era of emotion. Historians will look back on this part of the 21st century and go, how do we describe this era? It is the age of emotion. And in this age of emotion, if you have to break it down, well, there's celebrity, there's fear, because fear, and then how people spin out because of emotion. And then you have the celebrity. And so you have this kind of personality like Donald Trump that rises above it and does and says things that no one has ever said in that office before, and that shocks and offends those people in the global elites.
And they
but it's necessary.
To try to understand it. 2 points. Number one, on Charlie Kirk, like I was saying, for him to consistently, and he's still doing it right now. This week alone, he and Riley Gaines went to San Francisco State University.
You got to fight.
At somewhere in Portland, and the University of Washington.
University of Washington.
Just to talk about the fact that men, no matter what, can become women. You can't do it, guys.
You can't
do it.
Change
your name,
you can't.
But that's all they're talking about on campus.
Yeah.
And the death threats, the ugliness, the videos.
The death threats coming from the left. I mean, this is the party of tolerance. But death threats against Elon Musk. And they said, they're scratching. You have scratching Elon Musk's cars. Elon Musk, these are all owned by Democrats. When you're a Democrat, you're scratching a Tesla because you're trying to protest. You're going like, how dare you agree with me, you other asshole voting Democrat, No,
but these are the cars that you got a massive tax break if you drove those cars in the state of California for all those years. And now let's go key them all. But they are still having the courage to go into the belly of the beast and to talk about these basic issues. Human feces were thrown on Riley and Charlie this week because they're talking about the facts.
Doesn't it remind you of what happened in Alabama?
Sure does.
Doesn't it remind you of the civil rights, what people had to go through? To allow a black woman, a young, black, brilliant woman, to attend a university in Alabama. What did they have to do? They had to bring out the what? The National Guard. They had to bring out the National Guard so a girl can go to school because of the color of her skin.
The color of her skin.
And so now you're going to have, you're having an insanity happening with a small group of people. And that's why those people, you have to be able to legally protest. And that's a real key here, because there's been a big debate about protesting. If you're an American citizen, you are protected by your First Amendment right to protest. But you can't throw feces, you can't threaten, you can't, storm into a place.
Peaceful protests.
Yeah.
Go for it all day long. I totally
no matter what,
with it.
Including with Israel.
But there's also but you can't, there's repercussions
intimidate
from it.
Jewish students.
You can't, and absolutely not. You can't throw feces on somebody. And oh, by the way, if you're going to go protest, it means so much to you. Take your damn mask off.
Yeah. Hey.
Take your glasses off.
This is you, Antifa.
Hey,
if that's what if I get a chance to talk to to our Attorney General, we have to have. I don't know if it has to be legislated, but if you want to protest, but no masks when you protest.
Masks.
That should be illegal. Protest all you want. Show your face. Or you're a coward. And Antifa's a bunch of cowards.
Yes.
They're nothing but cowards.
I do want to, it's disgusting to watch. I do want to say this because as we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion and tolerance, to me, I've said this many times, it all begins and ends with diversity of thought. And that's the most important part.
Well, free speech.
And that's what my lawsuit was against Disney, was free speech and being...
I'd love to talk about Disney for a bit, too.
Truly meaning that when you want DEI, that you're actually going to practice it for everybody. We should get back to this before we leave. Is that Charlie Kirk, Riley Gaines... Kids.
Donald Trump, the thing that J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy, what they all have in common that the liberals don't understand is their agenda is they love America.
That's it.
And they want America to strive to be successful and to not have one foot in the sand when they're starting a race, like economically. And they want Americans to be healthy and have the opportunity.
And to have true diversity.
Yeah, but
that's what we
with
want.
With the meritocracy, to have the best of the best, to not be discriminated against because of the color of your skin.
But I love that they have had the courage to go into these college campuses and then have the conversation. And Charlie and Riley, I mean, they do it
beautifully.
So beautifully. I mean, I sit next to Charlie Kirk and I'm like, I am definitely much dumber than him. And I'll never be able to, that's just not going to happen.
When I go to university with him, I feel the same way, like, huh?
Right?
What?
Yeah.
Well, he said, he's smart. He went to college. He didn't go to college.
He didn't go to college.
He read a lot. He's smart. Smarter than me. He talked.
I cannot with your face. I've seen your faces before, but to see it in person is freaking me out right now.
It's fun. You know, I didn't get it. I didn't want to deal with politics at all. I didn't want to talk about it.
I know.
didn't want to but what happens is, but what happens is when they throw it in your face, like the girls, I have girls, they're going to be boys in girls sports. What? How is that possible? And what is that? It's true. This is a craziness. We have to, and then it's like, well, they're also going to force your kids to take all these shots, the COVID shot if they're going to go to school. What is that? How did that happen? Once you realize, you peel back what's happening, and you go, phew. So thank God for the beautiful Riley Gaines and the lovely Charlie Kirk, because they love America.
Such courage. And I think this is something I try to tell my kids and anyone who will listen. We can crush people for their opinions.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think the way you do it is very important, just from a moral perspective, But we have to remember that our opinions are based on our experiences.
Yeah.
And so we might disagree, but you don't know what I've been through. And I don't know what you've been through.
Yeah.
So why are we crushing that person? We do now, yeah.
We do have a kinship.
I think
we both used to be crazy liberals or liberals, because who wouldn't want to be liberal?
Who's we?
You and I.
I have never, ever. See, you're racist. You think because I have dark skin that I was a liberal.
No, because you worked for Disney.
So working for them means I was never liberal. I've always been.
But what are the tenets of liberalism? Women's rights.
Of course.
Okay, gay rights, civil rights. So these are the tenets. So we come from that traditional liberal. You'd have to give me individual rights. So these are the liberal tenets.
But to me, it's American.
Okay,
and it's human.
But you would have to agree that those are the traditional liberal tenets, wouldn't you?
They always have been, but now the liberals from today,
I don't call myself a liberal
completely right. Yeah. I have always been a conservative. Always.
Really?
My whole life.
But you agree with those tenets of liberalism, right? Civil rights?
Yes.
Women's rights?
Of course.
Okay, individual liberty?
Yes, but I also don't think that they were not tenets of Republicans and conservatives. I think it just was like an assumption. Like, of course, you're black, you're white, we're all together.
Right. I agree with you.
That's the way as the daughter of a
gay rights. Also.
No, I've always been fine with it.
Okay, but then I'm just saying those are traditional liberal tenets.
But you can't say, here are the rules and regulations. You can only call yourself a liberal if you believe every one of these.
Well, you can take a look at what is traditional liberalism. We can say, well, that seems to be on the list.
No, it is. And of course with gay rights, yes. And maybe, so call me somewhere in the middle, I don't know. But as far as my voting and my opinions, people assume a lot based on this. Oh, not you, but in general. And as a woman, automatically,
but you're not allowed to think because of,
Correct.
You're not allowed to be individual thinker. Or if you do think outside of it, then that's the part that pisses me off.
Well, then I'm a sellout. And
then somehow you think differently. So therefore, that's the most racist part of it all.
That's the racist part, but
Thomas
that's why I'm calling
Sowell's a sellout to his race.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Thomas Sowell. He wrote a beautiful book on the truth and fallacy, the social justice fallacy and truth of social justice, or the fallacy of social justice. I mean, this guy, he had a different opinion. He's brilliant. I can't believe. I wish my brain worked like his.
I wish mine did too.
You're allowed to think differently, and for the Democratic Party to say you, then you're out or you're a traitor to your race, that's racist. And so we really have.
But that's what I've called people out on, and that's why I've been uninvited to the cookout, the proverbial cookout, for the last decade. And I'm fine with it because I know the hypocrisy in it, and I'm stronger than that because I know that
Me too.
I don't judge anyone based on their race, and if I do, I'm actually a racist. And yes, black people can be racist as well.
Yeah, so can Asians, believe me. Asians, I mean, my mother, believe me, she was racist against other Filipinos. She said, I don't trust him. Why? He's Filipino. Like, aren't we Filipino? Yes, I don't trust us either. You know, she was, so it is, there is, but what we can do is we can have differences, we can have prejudices. We have commonalities that are more important. We can come together because we have the basis of what we all want. We want the success for this great country, this opportunity, this amazing experiment in freedom. We want to continue this for our children.
So how do we, those of us, you have a massive platform you have for decades and you will continue to be because you're taking all the right vitamins, you're going to live forever. You're going to live forever. So how, like, what's your thought process as far as your personal goals, knowing that you can affect change, that you can make a difference, that you can probably inspire friends of yours who believe like you do in your industry but are afraid to come out? How can you help us as a country?
Well, we're going to have to, you're going to have, the best thing could happen to me is for me to be freed from having to worry or being shunned by Hollywood because I don't have to make money in Hollywood anymore. I'll go out and I'll talk to people and I'll do these shows all over the country. And they want to come and they want to hear my point of view. And the problem is, you don't hear my point of view on TV outside of Fox. And that's what I tell people. I said, you know, the liberals, you get NBC, CBS, ABC, MSNBC, CNN. What do conservatives get? We get one news channel and a guy that sells pillows. That's all we got. Like, and you're looking good, you know. So
it's true,
more or less. But now we got News Nation. We have other Newsmax. They're all doing better. But we also have these individual podcasts. We have your podcast. We have to be able to get a voice out there. What can we do? We can do something that the liberals are better at, and we shouldn't do. They're better at canceling people. If we're going to go down that road. And whether James Lindsay, who's brilliant and way more brilliant than me, he calls it the new right. Now, whatever it is, we can't try to cancel culture because they're better assholes than we're ever going to be. They win that. What we have to do is we're going to have to show, you know, love. And I just call them assholes. But no, we can't asshole people who are better than us. And I don't mean, we can't.
But then we're hypocrites because we've bitched and moaned about cancel culture. So
yes,
we can't do that. And I don't want to. That's the thing. I don't want to cancel them. I do want to hold them accountable.
Let me tell you a story that affected me. Because I had to pray before I went to the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary.
Yeah, I remember we talked before that.
And I was like, I don't know if I should go because I know they don't like me. And I said, you know, I didn't wear like my Trump hat or anything. I wanted to.
Red MAGA hat.
But I wasn't going to go, we won, you know. But I went like, hey, I'm part of the history of the show. I need to show also a gratitude and respect for this, what Lorne Michaels has achieved. Probably the longest running, most successful show in the history of show business. And yes, they lean left because we were all in our 20s then. Who, you know, the old expression is true. If you're not a liberal, you know, in your 20s, you know, you're heartless.
You don't have a heart.
If you're still a liberal in your 50s, you're an idiot. And
that's true.
So I definitely feel that way. But anyway, so I go there and I go, just go there, just don't worry about this, and just, you know. So I go, and luckily my good friend Jim Brewer was with me, and I was there, and I saw, you know, Dave Chappelle was lovely, and so anyway, I'm there, and I go, well, I'm just gonna sit, you know, just relax, it's gonna be fine. I'm sitting next to Al Sharpton, and they got me next to him, and I go, how are you still alive? And then and I go, you know, everything's cool, it's all right, you know. He doesn't know who I am, it's fine. And then I see 2 rows down, I see Robert De Niro. And I go, look, well, he's not a Trump supporter. He not like Trump, and I love Trump. He not love Trump. And I said, well, I'm not gonna have to deal with him. It's all right, you know, he'd have to, you know, he's sitting over there 2 rows down to the left. He'd have to really turn his head. For De Niro to see me, he'd have to he'd have to do this, like, you know. So I said, I think I'm pretty good. Now, at the end of the show, they do this wonderful thing, a lovely thing Lorne Michaels does, where he invites everybody on stage. If you've ever been a cast member, if you've ever hosted, he invites us all on stage, which is a really generous, lovely thing to do. And God bless him. So we all start walking toward the stage. I was there for, you know, better part of 5 years. So I'm walking to the stage, and everybody in the audience basically has been on for 50 years. So everybody there has been either on the show or hosted the show or been a cast member. So we're all walking, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, and I see De Niro, like, you know, 2 rows in front of me, and all of a sudden they push, and then people start pushing again. And the next thing I'm right behind De Niro, and I go, please don't push, you know, he doesn't like Trump. And I bump into him, and he turns around. I swear to God, he's like, Schneider, I don't understand. He's a schmuck. Why can you support that? I don't understand how you could support that. He's turning a whole country into schmucks. And I swear, you know, in my mind, the only thing I thought about was like, Robert De Niro knows who I am. Oh my God. But then I swear to God, I looked at him, I swear on my children's life, I looked at him right in the eye and I said, I love you. No, really, I love you. And he just looked at me like, okay. And then he walked on stage.
No way.
But I swear, because I do love him. He's a great actor. He's been such an influence on generations of actors. And that body of work, I mean, God bless him. I mean, he's the heir apparent to Brando. So that he has Trump, that he hates Trump and that he can't, divest his own feelings from like half the country feels.
More than half, all the swing states.
But that's, I can't hold that against them. We can't beat them.
But was there,
unless with love. We're going to have to, if we're going to change people, it's got to be
Correct.
through love. If the Republican Party is going to have success, it's going to be because we love people. We want them to get healthy. We want them to be successful. We want your businesses to be successful. We're doing this for you. If we don't do it through love, it's not going to work. It's going to be meaningless.
Did that just automatically come out? Was that what you planned to say to him?
No,
when
I didn't
you saw
even-
him getting closer and closer, you're like, okay, what am I going to say?
I was hoping I was going to avoid having to see him at all.
Right.
But God bless him, because he did say, okay.
Where
I
do you
didn't plan
think-
that. No, I didn't want to see anybody
Right.
have conflict.
But then when you saw he was right there, you're like, oh crap, he might.
But I love the guy. And
Yeah.
we're going to have, if we're going to win, it's got to be through love. If you have to talk about what Christianity means, with the apostles, they said, well, how could you sum up Christianity? And they said, two words, love others. They didn't say love people who agree with us, love people in the same party, love people the same skin color, love people the same religion, love others. We're going to have to love our enemy. And that's what the thing was so beautiful about Christ and Christianity. It's like, the first of you will be the last of you. It's like, what? Yeah. Hey, we're going to have to love everybody. And you're going to, and if we're going to, if Jesus is going to come into our life, and if you're going to be, we need to be a reflection of Christ's love, which is love. It's not hate. It's not like, and then sometimes, we get angry sometimes, like, we're going to have to look at love. And we're going to have to, like, what do we need to do? We need to also start our own entertainment. As podcasts have grown, I'm starting my own company here in Arizona. We're going to do our own studio here. We're not just going to be, just a, conservative view. We're going to be here for everybody. But we're going to have traditional American Christian values.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's I hope people want to come support it. It's Friendly Fire Studios. My foundation is You Can Do It, surprise, You Can Do It Foundation, if people want to participate. And we're gonna do it, and it's gonna have to be through love. We're gonna have to make our own content. And as podcasts have grown and usurped the modern media menace, who did it to themselves. You lied to us, you abused us, you called us names, and now we no longer recognize you as news. We recognize you for what you are, propaganda. So the same way that podcasts have grown, as Elon Musk says, we are the media. The same way we will be the movie studios. It's going to take a while, but we will have to be, I want my company to be Disney. And Disney, that's a good thing about like what happened with Snow White. And I will say this, because you worked for Disney, and I'd like to talk about that for a little bit, because I want to defend Rachel Ziegler. How dare Disney blame, again, it's always blaming a woman. It's always women's fault. Like, you did this, you bit the apple, you did that, you didn't, as if Adam had, I didn't do it. And she did it, and then she handed it to me. I wasn't supposed to say no. So here they do it again. They're blaming women again. Disney's blaming their multi-billion-dollar company, the biggest entertainment company in the history of the world, blaming a young woman. Rachel Ziegler, maybe, yeah, she was arrogant, for sure. But I'm sorry, she didn't write the movie. You can't blame Disney. You can't blame Rachel Ziegler for writing the movie. You can't blame her for casting it, because it was miscast, obviously, according to looking at that. And then you didn't blame her for making AI dwarfs. Can you imagine a real small, short person? Well, I can say dwarf. I can say dwarf. I practically qualify. Can you imagine it being a dwarf? Like, thank God they're doing a Snow White. At least finally I'll get some work again. Here we go. I can audition. Call my agent. Let's go. I am perfect for one of the dwarfs. It could be any of the 8, whatever. He said, no, we're going to go AI. What? We don't want to be disrespectful. Disrespectful to me, I'm the guy, and I don't think it's disrespectful.
And now you're going to use computers.
So
to
it's
represent.
again, it's this false notion of like, you know, we don't want to punch down on these dwarfs. We're going to just make the dwarfs. So what did you do? You took opportunities away from these little people who needed the job, frankly. So as I did, but to blame Rachel Ziegler, didn't cast it. She didn't write it. She didn't direct it. She didn't promote. She didn't do the. Well, she did promote it, kind of, but she didn't. She wasn't in charge of the marketing campaign. So to blame her, that's shame on Disney. Because Disney, you wrote that movie, you released it, you put it out. You waited a year, but it was you that did it. So to blame this girl is just cowardice. You should have protected her. She's a young actress. You know, and I hope she can have a different opinion. She could be woke as she wants to, but to potentially destroy her career because the cowards executive at Disney refused to stand up and say, hey, whoa, leave her alone. We made this decision, we wrote it, but they left her hanging out to dry.
I agree with that. I also, though, think back to the first time she spoke out, you know, a year plus ago, and that didn't go well.
It didn't go well. I'm not saying she's not arrogant.
So then to double down and make it worse, then that is actually, in my opinion, selfish based on the teammates that she has and the effect
well,
it
no,
has.
I'm not taking away that she's not arrogant and that she didn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
She did.
But to your point,
but Disney should have also said, "Hey, listen, you got a big movie. Before we start, here's some of the ground rules." I mean, at a certain point, you have several $100 million on the line here. It's your big movie. Talk to your people. I mean, and I would say, and there's a difference between free speech, freedom of consequences, but also like, you know, I don't think that you're going to have, like, for instance, there's a very famous actor, comic actor, really, really famous. In the beginning of 2024. Had a TV series on one of the streaming services, and they told him, you can't tweet anything because he's a conservative. Don't tweet anything. And you know what? Well, I think they're stifling his free speech. At the same time, he's working for a private company. So I do think that there's some, you know, and I think with social media, it's still trying to figure out what's happening. But I do think like you have to guide people. Just like, you know, somebody's joining the NBA or whatever. Hey, listen, these are the potential consequences. These are the potential risks. You're going to be going to these different towns. You know, women are going to be throwing themselves at you. People are going to want money from you. And this could potentially be the average career in any professional sports, 4 years. And then 3 years later, 70% of those people declare bankruptcy. So like, you know, so in the same way, they should have had that conversation with her.
And maybe they did it after her first little outburst, and then it continued on. That's what I would love to know is just the chronology of it, because it's one thing for it to go badly and then you do it again. That's concerning. But the bigger picture is that Disney has laid the groundwork for things like this for years with other decisions.
They set it up.
There's a reason why their movies and films have been doing this. With
There's a reason why Disney, when you're a parent, you have to watch the movie first before you can show it to their kids. My wife and I go, let's just watch the new Disney movie first ourselves and see if there's any crazy indoctrination happening.
I never had to do that with my kids, and this is.
You send them, go see the movie.
No, it was fine. Yeah. That was the one safe place we could go. I remember having a friend who was upset because she didn't let her daughter watch any of the princess movies with Disney or play with Barbies because, well, women, we're not that. We're not just here to be. I'm like, okay, great. We're not taking it that literally. I'm not with my daughters. They're living with a strong woman and their mother, like whatever. Yeah. That was the biggest concern. Now, look, so no sympathy for Disney. And by the way, I think it's fascinating that they just decided to put a theme park in UAE. I mean, so we're going to the Middle East where I mean, there's a very long history of treating people poorly, put it that way.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're gay. So think about the fight that Disney put up against the state of Florida a couple of years back, and don't say gay, and Ron DeSantis is the devil, and let's boycott the city. Are we going to move the theme park because they don't want gays as part? Insanity there. Right. The bill didn't even say don't say gay if you actually read the bill. And so now for them to put a theme park there, a $10 billion theme park there, what does that say? Oh, so we pick and choose when we care about human rights and decency, right?
Like LeBron James will never criticize China. You know, he won it all. But they say, well, no, we're trying to open up China. But you can criticize the Republicans all you want.
But the key to me with all of this is accountability.
Yeah.
Like we talked about earlier, and with Democrats and with many of those things that they preach but aren't practicing the diversity, Now we have to call it out. They were held accountable at the election.
Yeah.
And I think, again, many people didn't want to vote for Donald Trump. But when you realize, when you're able to separate, and that's what I've done,
Yeah.
Policy from personality.
Yeah.
I actually don't care about your personality. I don't care. I need policy because of my kids, the life I want them to have, and everybody else who I don't even know. My father, his 23 years in the service as an Army officer.
Well, there you go.
My grandfather as a Buffalo soldier, a
Wow.
black man who was not allowed to fight with white troops in the same American army.
Yeah.
This is what they fought for, is true equity, diversity, inclusion. And so I refuse now to shut up. And I'm so grateful for you, because it took so much courage, and it still does, for you to do what you're doing and to speak up, and even to go to that SNL reunion. Like, that did take courage. I hope that you had a moment there where when you drove away, you pat yourself on the back a little bit privately, because I would have been quite nervous to do what you did, but we needed to see you there.
Well,
We
thank
needed.
you. It was, you know, I knew kind of what was going to, thank you. I knew what was kind of happened, but I think we do have to put the idea, I mean, that was the thing, like, I never wanted to get involved in politics, but
Me
politics
either.
but it gets involved with you, because if you don't get involved, like Plato said, well, then you'll be, you know, then the government, then you'll be run by a bunch of idiots, I think, to paraphrase badly what Plato said. But yeah, you'll be run by crazy people. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, the idea that, you know, well, it's boys and girls sports was just crazy. As the great Dave Chappelle says, if LeBron retired from the NBA, he could play in the WNBA for another 20 years. It's like, we obviously there's a difference.
If LeBron went to WNBA, this was the best part about that Chappelle bit, was, okay, then what happens? He scores 756 points a night. Congratulations, that's what you want?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, be like, oh, wait, no. Right,
Yeah.
but it's only going one direction for a reason. There aren't women trying to go play in the NBA, because we know we can't. We can do other things that you can't do, including have children. Don't even try me on that one.
Right.
But in general, whatever, we're going to point out the hypocrisy. I need to end on this, because I have loved getting to know you over the last several months. We, you know, just chatting about life and all the stuff that we've talked about today. Your faith is so cool to see you living out loud. And you walked in with...
there's a new pope, and God bless our new pope, an American pope. What a
By
color
the way, you
coordinated.
became Catholic just 2 years ago, is that right?
Yes. Well, I saw. I mean, it's the closest to the actual words of Jesus Christ. It's the rock of the church, and for, you know, people who for Christians, I would just say to you that there was something special about Peter. You know, Jesus had for Peter to lead. You're going to be the rock of my church. The only apostle that Jesus made a special prayer for, is to lead the church. And one of the new Peters, pontiff of our church, has been appointed today, an American, which I think is important.
So interesting.
Interesting. You know, at the same time, is it going to be a continuation of Pope Francis? This is Leo the 14th, and the 13th was pro, and it's very interesting that he chose, that title, Leo the 14th, because the 13th was ushering in human rights and human values and the dignity of the individual human being. And that's the key we need to always focus on. And in any culture battles that we have, or any battles we have, and spiritual battles, is to always know that the dignity of every human being, by the very virtue of them being a human being, is deserving of dignity, all of us. And I'm very hopeful, and I think it's great, because I do think the strength of America is what stopped the world from going to tyranny. And I saw that coming, the global tyranny coming in the 2010s. I saw it kind of coming, and from the kind of globalist takeover, corporate globalist takeover. But the prevention of that is the United States. Is our Second Amendment. It's our First Amendment. It really is our ability to, as a country, still be free. It got close to. It got close. And so when you see, we're in a spiritual warfare. Absolutely. This is absolutely spiritual. And there is evil in the world. And we need to fight against it. When you recognize what that is, we're going to have to come, and we're going to have to be a reflection of Christ's light, and by being loving. And as much as I get angry, and as much as I, at my worst,
at my best, we need to be a reflection of God's light.
What does that do for you in your hands?
Well, it
that
reminds
rosary?
me that there is a sacrifice that is made for all of humanity. And it was something that God gave to us, his only begotten Son, for all of us to have to be able to start and to be able to have forgiveness. And that's the thing, the difference between Christianity and the atheistic, liberal cancel culture that we're living in, is there's no path to redemption. When you get canceled from ESPN, from Disney, there's no path of forgiveness or redemption. But the redemption is automatic, and it is beautiful. If you declare yourself a follower of Jesus Christ and believe that he died for you, then you are a brother in Christ, and you are saved. And that is the most beautiful gift in the history of the world. So to have that gift and to not be joyous about spreading that is a wasted gift. So as much as I fail, and as much as a sinner, as much as I fall, all of our works are but dirty rags in the face of the Lord. To know that you start there, what a beautiful place to start from. And to know that, well, if my best works are but rags in the face of the Lord, how much more so my pride? How much more so my anger or my supposed position in show business or in society? If I am going to proceed in the light of the Lord, then you got to start acting like it. And I can do that by standing up for what I believe, but it's got to come from a place of love. And when I fail, I don't. I think we have to have righteous confrontations, but it has to be with love. And as I proceed along this course, I need to be more aware of that and to be more to be as loving as I can. And I need work on that, but I'm trying my best, and I pray for that. And I want to thank all the people who prayed for me, and prayed for you, because it really is prayer. I used to think, it's just a nice thing to do.
Oh, I feel it.
Yeah, I used to just think that, but then when I had the worst conflicts, because that's how you get tested, and that's how the devil tests us. Is like, you think you're good? You're not worried about the world anymore, what the world thinks? I go, yeah, I think I'm good. I got that. What if somebody in your own family says something? How are you going to handle that?
It's hard.
It's like, how am I going to handle that? Well, you handle it through prayer. My wife and I did the rosary in the middle of the very dark time in my life. And I will tell you, during the middle of that, when there's negativity all over the internet and all everything, and I got to tell you, I've never felt more peaceful. Because my wife and I were a team, and people prayed for me. And I had priests I had people on the phone, and they said, this isn't about you. And I go, what do you mean? You're being used. And I said, just pray, because God will be able to use you in ways that you don't understand yet. And so I prayed, and I just said, just don't plan what you're going to say. And I learned from all these people that there is this terrible epidemic happening in America about these woke children kicking out their parents, and that they're not allowing them to see the grandchildren. And I said, and I had so many people reaching out to me that I couldn't look at it anymore. It hurt. And I just prayed, and you realize that, like, wow, it did mean something. But it's got to come from a place of love and a place of hopeful redemption, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything. So I will say that I've been wonderfully humbled, and that's the best thing, because when you are, then you can really start from a place from love, and that will be what a great place to start from. And I'm so blessed for all the people who prayed for me, and my family, and my wife Patricia, that's how I know God loves me, because He gave me that. Thank you. You can take all your Academy Awards, you can take all your box office mojo and all your success. And I said, but that I wouldn't trade. I mean, that is my gift from God. And my gift from God has to be back how I live my life and what I do. And that's the responsibility. I don't know what's going to happen next. All I know is I'm here now, and I'm just trying to express hope and You know? Hopefully it'll bring some laughter.
Do you know that that's how I, through some of these journeys the last few years, define faith? When you continue to take that next step, even though you have no idea where it's going to lead you, that's faith, that's trusting. And I feel that in you, and you already are living this. I will never forget the visual, the beautiful picture you painted of standing right behind Robert De Niro, and your response, I love you, that's everything. You're already practicing this, and I believe it has to have an effect. It already is, Rob.
Well, I mean, I feel humbled by it, and I feel like, you know, it's emotional. You know, you just have to, you know, I don't know what has planned for me and what God has planned for me, but I know that He's brought me here today, and He's got me through this thing, and I'm grateful for all of it. And that was the thing, going back to Father Mike, be grateful in the middle of it. Be grateful for your problems, during the problems, and pray, because this is a beautiful thing. God wants us to experience all of it.
He does.
You know, and what it just reminds me of, like, Yahweh. I've always like, recently it's like, well, the first breath you take in is Yah. The last breath you ever give on this plane. And that was at the rabbi at my father's funeral. They say, you got 1931. That's the date there. Your dad was born. And then you got 2000, the day your dad passed. Now the line in the middle is ours. The other two dates belong to God. The line in the middle, that's ours. We got that.
And you are living that line.
I'm trying.
And
I can do better.
But we all can. I think if we don't believe that, then we've got issues. And you've got these three beautiful girls.
Thank you.
Watching you live this way.
Well,
They're lucky. They're lucky to have you. They're
you.
blessed to have you leading this way.
I appreciate you.
Thank you
I
for
didn't know it's going to be like
sharing.
it's going to be like an emotional thing. I love you, Dom. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you for today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sage.
Our faith is what is saving us right now.